All right, the doors are open. 2021 planning. We got Lee coming in and Susan. So, hey, my name is Kirk. We're going to have a nice sized group here to interact quite a bit. So, as you come in, if you would enter the city that you're located at, then that would help John and I kind of gear the conversation more towards you and what's on your mind. So, definitely come in. We've got our front row seats, for how we're going to use the numbers to get into 2021, which we have more clarity, more impact. Yep, John and I just had a good conversation. Welcome to the webinar. Yep, Russell, how you doing? Russell, our sales expert. So he's out there in Wisconsin, but works everywhere, especially now with most of us are working virtually on many days. So drop it in. John, you doing okay? You ready to rock and roll here in a moment?
I think we're good to go here. We've got an interesting situation that we're talking about.
We've got a lot to talk about. I see Susan's in McLean. That's not too far. I'm outside of DC in Bethesda, Maryland. So we're almost, literally 5 minutes that way. We could catch up kind of stuff. So very good. We'll give it another minute just for people to come in. Then we're gonna rock and roll. And anybody else, let us know where you're at. Hey, Craig, he's our growth CFO down in Tampa, Florida, or Clearwater, Tampa area. So, okay, so we're at time. John, are you ready?
I'm ready to roll.
Okay, so let's get into it. My name is Kirk. I'm the CEO of Foresight CFO. In addition, I teach financial management at Georgetown University as part of the how do we use the numbers to have more clarity about to choose the right option and follow through on it. And John, do you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, I'm John Redmond. I'm a couple hours north of New York City, and I'm a CFO for Foresight and partner with Kirk here.
Yeah, we've been doing this for quite a while together. I see you got Illinois. That's fantastic. You nationwide. So let's set the stage for what we're about to jump into. Yep, John, this is your slide.
Okay, here we go. One of the things that we're looking at, and you're all looking at it, is that this is an unusual year, and I think that's safe to say. And no matter where you are on the political spectrum or the economic spectrum or the healthcare spectrum, there's a lot of things that are affecting our economy and affecting small business. And it's not just the primary effects like your paycheck, but your vendors and your customers are affected. And that affects your projections, your profit, and your outcomes. So one of the things that we're going to try and talk about today is almost the best way to prepare or to face the unknown. And that deals with the annual performance cycle. Now this is most companies operate on some sort of planning cycle where they plan in the last quarter of the year and they lay out strategic objectives and outcomes, and then they execute them through the year and then follow up until next year. So this is a skill that is, in a time like this, where there's so many larger unknowns and the tectonic plates of the economy are moving, that this is a skill that's not just nice to have, it's really necessary. And it's your best defense against the unknown or the difficult. And so this is what we want to talk about today, that we want to talk about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, what it is that makes this work, how you can do it. And then secondly, we want to talk about leveraging your planning to the next level so that you're not just prepared for a regular year, but you've got a series of plans, 3 or 4 plans that you can react to quickly in case things shift. And so this is so again, we're not in regular times, and when the tough gets going, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Because Vince Lombardi, and I think that's what we're going to talk about today. What does it mean to get going as a company leader? What do you have to do differently this year that you've done in previous years, and how do you get the extra edge you need to navigate through this time? It's the same thing. Use the numbers, use last year's plans, you identify threats and opportunities in your environment, you canvass your customers and vendors carefully, make sure they're healthy, and make a plan. But there's a few edges to it that we want to bring into this discussion. Make sure that you're operating at the level you need to, so that on the other side of whatever's coming, you're still standing and hopefully prospering. You can get through a time like this, not just survive it, but you can actually thrive. So the Chinese symbol for crisis is a combination of two symbols. One is danger and one is opportunity. So our goal is to cash in on the opportunities that are revealed by a time of disruption. And you can become a disruptive company, not a road game. All right, Kirk, that's a little grim, but I think that's somehow framing what we're looking at, and what we want to accomplish today is going to explore that.
Yeah, it's suitable. I mean, the Chinese symbol, there's danger, there's opportunity here, and we're literally at the stage before 2021 starts, planning, and then through stage 2, budgeting, putting the numbers with it, making sure that we're engineering, profitability so that the financial resources work. And so, to make this more interactive, put in the chat box, what are you doing to plan, and do you anticipate any major changes coming up? And John and I will kind of monitor your responses. And while you do that, let's find out who's in the room. We got 2 questions for you, right? The first question is, what was your top line revenue in the prior year? And there's brackets, to show what range you're in. And the second question we want to know for the folks in the room here is, do you expect revenue to increase this year, decrease, or stay about the same? And on previous webinars, it's really kind of surprised me, some of the responses we have. So your responses are completely anonymous, and we'll share the statistical results with everyone, but it's completely anonymous about what your individual response is. So good stuff. It's going to planning. Okay, we've got 73%. That's fantastic. We'll keep it open just a second longer. If you want to vote, this is the year to vote. All right. Get some practice now. Okay. Very good. I'm going to wrap up the poll right now. Okay, take a look. So most of us in the room, about almost 70%, get a 0 to 5 million. So only 4% of business owners make it past $1 million. So if you're doing that, you got a good foothold to go where you want to go. The rest we got from 5 to 10 and 10 to 40. So good range. There's definitely different issues at each stage, but the habits of profitability that we're going to look at, the methods to use the numbers, it fits for all different types of businesses. You got to adjust it at different stages, different sizes, different stages of your life cycle, different sizes. It works. Some of these techniques have been used from startups up to the largest company it's ever been used for. It did just over $1 billion, but that's a whole nother story.
So this is interesting, Kirk, and only about 1/3 of the people feel that their revenue is going to decrease this year. I think we'd attribute to these factors, which is interesting, which means that the underlying economy seems pretty strong. If 2/3 of our companies are confident that they're going to do as good or better than they did previously.
Yeah, thanks for highlighting that. I just literally jumped over that. So good points. Let's kind of get into this. Let's paint the picture a little bit more here. So, seriously, 2020 is a year that we did not see coming. We're foresight. We like to look down the road a bit. And, good news, bad news. We like to see it. Minimal surprises. Did not see this at all. The pandemic. I mean, COVID started to go mainstream. It was January. And by March, things are shutting down. We had a CEO lunch planned for the 25th of March. It did not happen. One thing that was impressive is the government moved really fast to get trillions of dollars of stimulus out into the marketplace to fill the hole, right? So that we could avoid sliding backwards. It was, like the PPP program. It was designed to be fast, not perfect. So we're still working out what's forgiveness and the use periods. There's still a lot to work out, but let's be fair. It accomplished its mission of moving fast. And that's, I was talking to Larry Stubblefield, the head of the veteran program at the SBA yesterday, and he said that in 14 days, they did more lending than they did in 14 years. And so that's the fact that a government agency can do that. I mean, I'm impressed.
Yeah.
Seriously, right?
Yep.
And then somewhere between that, March, May, that, social justice, social unrest, I mean, that started with George Floyd, where things, people are under pressure, losing their jobs, feeling the fear of a pandemic, lot of uncertainty. And then, boom, that exploded. And somewhere after that, we started burning down our cities. The militant, milita are shooting protesters and taking over state governments. I mean, by October, this month, we have never seen a year like this, right? And so if you're feeling stressed, I mean, it's okay. There's a good reason to, that we are in an economic recession. Things have contracted. We're seeing on the growth CFO side, we're seeing more need. Companies can't service their debt anymore, right? Because the top line isn't what it used to be. So, debt restructure, defaults, we're going to see more bankruptcies. It's already happening, right? And these are, if it's not the folks on the phone, these are your clients, your vendors, right? The people that you may have worked with for a long time and you trust, and a lot of people are challenged. Supply chain is just disrupted, and maybe you want to diversify your supply chain. So here we are, and now we're going into, at the very least, a contentious election in November, and maybe a contested election. Certainly the framework is set to be contested. So from a business standpoint, man, we do better when there's some level of clarity and predictability and certainty. So put in the chat box if you're feeling any of this, let John and I know kind of what's getting to you the most. Okay, kind of the next step. So this is where we're at. Some of the early outcomes of these pressures is that the way that we do business is already changing. I mean, hygiene standards and cleanliness standards have gone way up from what they used to be. That's probably a good thing, right? Consumer demands have changed. I mean, there's an example of a restaurant that obviously did in-store services. Well, they converted themselves to a product company by kind of a do-it-yourself at-home kit, right? Which is going from a service to a product. Employee expectations have changed, right? Many folks, people who thought they could never work virtually, they could never work from home, they are, right? They are working from home. Some people want to, at least on a part-time, fractional basis, they want to continue working that way. Why not, right? So it changes need for space. As we digitize, the digital transformation of the economy has been accelerated, right? And the skills to work like we're working now together are different than those if you're in the same office. I mean, how do you manage sales, delivery, interact with clients, right? Use of office space. I mean, the digital transformation has been accelerated. These are, there's massive change and uncertainty. Again, you're dropping into the chat box, kind of what you're getting hit by. So let's kind of see, how do we, we're entrepreneurs, we started businesses, we don't put our head in the sand. So John, will you take us through, are you on offense or defense?
Yeah. All right. So here's our, and this is a question again for on the planning cycle. When difficult things happen, there's several ways to address them, and this is true of life as well. You can pretend they're not happening. Denial is not just a river in Egypt, and you just hope for the best and close your eyes. And that's actually normal human behavior, but it's not really good for CEOs, because they're not responsible just for themselves. They have to actually keep their people functional and their vendors and customers happy as well. And some CEOs will avoid these questions. They see them, they see the challenges, but they don't want to talk about it because they're kind of helpless and don't really have a sense of what to do other than just feel discouraged. But I think the third group is the one we want to talk about, and I assume because you're here, you also want to talk about this, is take some action minimize the damage, and if possible, maximize the positive outcome. And that's what we want to kind of talk about that. So if you look at a parallel situation, if you're if you're in Florida and a hurricane's coming, you can take one of those, hunker down and close your eyes. You can pretend it's not there, or you can put some plywood on the windows. You can get some gas for the generator, right? You can stock up the food and ride it out, or you can drive out to a Hyatt and spend the weekend in the hot tub in Georgia. So I think there's options here for everybody, and we want to talk about the options, and not just running off to do something, but actually having a step-by-step plan to kind of extend your defenses and then go on the offense. So that's kind of the next steps we want to talk about. And we want to make sure that you've got plywood on the windows and fuel in the generator. Let's take a look at that next slide, Kurt.
Yeah. Hey,
here's our fundamental approach to planning and healthy, the healthy foundation from which to plan. When you're planning, you have to have a good sense of where you came from. And the best way to do that is with numbers. Everyone has stories about how they started out in their garage and ended up in their current office, looking down on everybody. The real key is the numbers. How did your numbers start? Where did they grow? Where did they take you? And where can they take you? Second thing, especially now, is have your hands around cash, because right now if the banks get shaky knees, you don't need to be making new friends with a banker when things are tough. You need to have good friends now, and you need to have a healthy cash balance just in case. The third thing then is to create a roadmap for your company, and it's not just a wish list. A roadmap is based on roads. So where can you go to get the maximum benefit? And where are the numbers showing that you can go? I'd love to have double my square footage in my store, but that's not really the key point here. The key point is, what can you pay for? And that's what your numbers will tell you, if they're done well and if they're aligned with your actual business. Once you get there, once you get the roadmap, you have the solid numbers, then you're planning, you can drive performance. You can find the weak spots and you can drive performance. And your planning is based on a solid historical transcript, at least 2 to 3 years. And you can pull trends out of the numbers to show where your strengths are and what you have to shore up. And then finally, once you get this kind of roadmap and you've got a positive trend, you got your hands around your current business and kind of your potential business, then you can go looking for the right options. There's many ways to take your business. There's places to invest, there's customers to seek, there's help to get. And in identifying these 5 or 6 ways to strengthen your business, if you do it on the foundation of solid understanding of your numbers, strengths, and weaknesses, you'll end up with your most likely path for success. Again, this is the hard work part. And without this, everything else is not planning, it's hoping. And so our goal here is to help people solidly plan their next steps. So in this case, what we're going to use these 5 habits, we're going to put on the plywood and we're going to gas up the generator. And then after that, we're going to talk about the what if, what's the possibility. So I'll let Kurt kind of cover these 5 habits, which are fundamental to every business and to this, in this time, especially important.
Yeah, thank you, John. And the other John on the webinar, GovCon company, so he's putting in the chat box that, planning now where you got to target new agencies, it's harder to get out. In other words, in many places you can't get out and meet, the procurement officers. How do you deal with this? And then even, financially, getting the right resources in lockdown, it's just more challenging. So across the board, John, we're seeing that just across the board with businesses, and the pressure is building, right, as we go into multiple months of this. So let's get into using the numbers, and the numbers complement you. Everyone on the phone got into business because you're really good at something, or you have an opportunity at that something in the world. Most of us don't come from a background as financial managers and how to use the numbers to have a clear flight plan. So in the 5 habits, we're going to give you those big building blocks and that have been proven to help CEOs like us, kind of make decisions with greater clarity, confidence, and then when you're executing, if something's moving, something's going sideways, you act on it that week. You don't have to wait until the end of the month or the end of the year, because you're literally burning time. So the first habit to have a solid financial footing is making sure you have good numbers. For those of you with the management team, look at the financials together. Teach your P&L managers how to explain the numbers story. What did I actually achieve for the areas that I'm responsible for this month and year to date, compared to what did I expect in my budget? That's all budgets are, is at a certain point in time, this is what I expect. So the number story, what's different from what I expect, what I actually did, and then teach your managers to propose action, right? What should they do if something's less than expected? How do we get back on track? If something's better than expected, why? Why is it better than expected? How do we do more of that, right? So this practice, by using the numbers, it establishes extreme ownership, where it's not just the weight's on your shoulder, but your team members are starting to carry the water with you. Just for a moment, just imagine that you're into your monthly financial statement review, and you're with your sales manager, your business development person, whatever you call that person, the person who's supposed to bring in new clients, and they do that. They explain, hey, on these product lines, on these contracts, whether it's government contracts or commercial, I'm over or under, and they explain how much and why that is, and they propose what action they're going to take. And then as a leadership team, you can weigh in. Hey, I don't think we should do plan A, we should do plan B. I mean, what would that be like to have your sales manager come in with that level of clarity and that level of ownership? From a personal experience standpoint, without the numbers, the salesperson can say anything, right? It's always that $1 million deal is right around the corner, but you never see it, right? But the numbers kind of clear out all the noise. Now we are on the same team together, and then take that same skill throughout all your managers. The delivery managers, they're responsible for that, the cost that goes into an outcome for a client. Support services, technology, your back office, accounting, finance, HR, recruiting. So this, habit one is making sure you have good numbers and using the monthly financials like a scoreboard. And
one thing I might like to add, Kirk, everyone has numbers because you have to pay your taxes. Everyone's got some numbers. What we find sometimes is that the numbers are historical and backward looking, and they're not detailed enough to really do the kind of drilling in you need to do to pull out the weaknesses in your business. So not just good numbers, but detailed enough that you can kind of understand them, or that they can kind of help you.
Yeah, that does. Another benefit of this, when you know what the direct cost is going into either a service or product outcome, you're able to price more competitively, right? Because you have more confidence in the team managing precisely within a certain framework. So the whole thing about as CEO, we want to win more clients. Well, using look at the financials every month gives you the capability of pricing even more competitively, because your managers will manage delivery within those costs, right? And again, if something's going sideways, you see it and can act on it. So for those of you who are either doing this, where you look at the financials every month beyond yourself, and if you're already doing it, does this take weight off your shoulders? Is that having your P&L managers have that much ownership? If you're not doing it, do you think that actually using the financials every month like we're describing, do you think this would help you out? And if not, why not? Right? And we'll bring that into the discussion here. Okay, so the first step in 2021 planning is make sure you know where you're coming from. Good numbers. Look at your performance this year compared to last year, so you can start seeing what momentum you have and what's changing in each key part of your business, from sales to delivery and overhead. Right, the three big parts. And we're going to take it another step, right? In addition to having good financials that you're actually using, a best practice is, start tracking key performance indicators every week. What activities go into producing what results for each function: sales, delivery, those support services and overhead. The reason why you want to do it every week is if you wait for the financials, roughly 8 to 10% of the year is over every time you get a financials. It's why wait that long when you can get weekly financials or weekly KPI? Teach your managers to look at where is the kink in the hose, what's going sideways, and that very same week they take action, right? You have that many more opportunities to correct your flight plan, like get back on course. You got small nudges versus big nudges at the end of the month. And kind of to highlight some of the best practices, if you don't already have a dashboard built like Microsoft BI, business intelligence, if you don't already have that built, don't get hung up on having the perfect dashboard. A lot of times it's wise to start just with a spreadsheet, start tracking a few key numbers, and every week use it. And then from that, you'll figure out what else do you need, what's useful, what's not useful. And at some point, within a few months, you'll get to a manual dashboard of measurements that you can actually act on every week. At that point, then it makes sense to, hey, how do we automate this where both the analysis and the distribution of the analysis is automated, like through a tool like business intelligence from Microsoft. And that what you see on the dashboard is an example of the BI dashboard. For us at Foresight, internally and with clients, game changer internally, because you can, by week 3, you can address something if it's lingering, versus, letting something play out over, 3 months, 6 months, or 9 months. If you have experience with, some of the dashboards, seeing here, like, meaningful, timely KPI make a huge difference, right? And just literally in your normal weekly huddles with team members, make that where you start the conversation. Okay, so that's habit 1. You got, from where you've been, you got the numbers working for you. You know your profitability. You know what your top line is doing. You know what cash you have in the bank. Strong foundation now, and it's a skill. The more consistently you do it, the better you get. So, 3 months, expect to be at one. You're getting good. By 6 months, you're getting really good, right? Some of the mystery goes out, and you've already given feedback to accounting on what needs to be corrected so that you have useful, accurate support reports. Okay, so let's take the steps. You got profitability. At least you know where you're coming from on habit 1. Habit 2 is manage cash well, right? Cash is literally the fuel in the gas tank that keeps it going. Typically, when cash runs out, that's when the doors close on a business. And when cash is good, when you can make payroll with no sweat, pay your vendors, keep current, feeling pretty good. And it allows you to focus on other things in a business like sales and developing team members and delivering on your promises. So there's 2 practices. One practice is used frequently by companies. If you're not there yet, take this step. The first practice is create and use a 12-month, a 12-week cash forecast where from this week Monday, what do we expect to get in cash inflows, and what do we expect to send out, right? Could be payroll, pay your vendors, subcontractors, paying taxes, and this gives you a nice, pretty 3-month short-term visibility going into next year, 2021. Where are there disconnects, right? So some of it, you just got to move timing from when you pay vendors versus when the cash comes in. Some of it, if there's a real shortage, a systemic problem, you'll see it, right? We can't, maybe we can't service our debt because it's based on a different top line. Let's see it, and by seeing it, we can decide what to take action on. So the 12-week cash forecast, you match up timing, you identify shortages, and start to build a reserve. Start to carve out some amount of money every month or every week to put into a fund that could be used for emergencies, or it could be used for an opportunity, right? Where you get the cash you need. As you look through the holidays, typically some clients pay slower during the holidays because whoever processes the payment may not be there, right? Or may not be there as often. So the 12-week cash forecast, it gives you that short-term visibility beyond today. What do I expect tomorrow? So you can start making changes. The second best practice with cash, which is rarely used by most private businesses, is the cash conversion cycle. And this is about how do you get your cash faster and how do you keep it, right? Traditionally, you paint a picture. Traditional business to business companies, the way we work is we do the work on a month, and we're making payroll payments, paying for material, paying vendors, and then the first week of the second month, we bill the client, and for some reason, I don't know why, somebody put net 30, hey, you can pay me another 30 days. So now, if the machine works the way it's designed, you got you're into the third month before you get paid, and you're in every 2 weeks you're making payroll and paying rent and paying vendors, right? And like, oh my God, man, that's called a negative cash cycle. And you got to have a sufficient working capital to keep that kind of machine going. But if you measure your cash conversion cycle, how long from doing the work to billing, from billing to collecting the cash, and the same on vendor payments and inventory, how many days is it taking us, right? And how does our day sales, or number of days for each part of the cycle, compare to either a benchmark for my industry or a target? Because usually, if you do that calculation, there's some ahas, and a lot of times the aha is, hey, if I just get to the industry standard, how much more cash do I free up, right? And freeing up cash, obviously fills up your bank account, makes it easier to make payroll. That beyond that, the less cash your business uses, the more valuable your business becomes. So there's things that you care about today, and there's things you care about tomorrow. There's 7 succession options. So how does all this line up? So I went into some detail, but the main takeaway here is, for cash management, make sure you got your 12-week visibility, and every week you're making sure things match up to decide what you pay, what you don't pay this week. And then measure your cash conversion cycle. You might be surprised what you see there. Okay, so I'm gonna keep moving here through either financial block and tackle, habit 1, habit 2. So at this point, if you got the first 2 habits going in the right direction, it's time to make habit 3 work for us, which is, this is where you create your financial roadmap, right? Where, some people call that the budget. But budget sounds like, like bureaucratic, but that's not what we're talking about. John, are you thinking something here?
Oh, I was just thinking that budget, it does sound like a 4-letter word. It's actually got 5 letters in it, but many people just flinch when they hear budget. But I think if it's done correctly, it's a dynamic, forward-looking document. And so I think that's critical to do it right.
Yeah. And it literally is like always trying to get a better word that brings in how dynamic. When budget's done well, it is not static, it's not bureaucratic, it's not administrative. It's communication based on your goals. That stage 1 planning that John talked about. You decided what your objectives are, what your actions are in the marketplace. So then stage 2, the budgeting. All you're doing is putting the financial resources across a timeline, based on, to accomplish what you want to accomplish. What do you think it's going to take, translate into a financial resource, right? And you can see if it adds up. Bottom line, can we afford at that rate? Can we afford it on the front end, versus what we think we'll get on the back end? And so it's a communication tool, right? That where it's just laid out in some level of clarity, month by month. What we, given our actions, what we expect to come in, and what costs are associated with that. If you're doing something new, like new sales initiatives, you definitely want to be tied down. What do we put into the project? What do we get out of it? In a way that you can at a minimal monthly, know if you're on target or off target.
Yeah, and
Uh-huh.
the purpose of a budget is not to have a budget. The purpose of a budget is to be smart about spending your money. And so if the budget, if you have a budget, you put it on the shelf and you pull it out next year, it's no good. Only useful if it's really applied to your growth scenarios and operating scenarios.
Yeah, it's a living tool, and so imagine, I mean, you teach your P&L managers for their part what they control, the lay out their expectations and numbers from the first month of the year, January through December, if you're a calendar year company, ownership, right? And then if you go back to habit one, that monthly variance, when we're over or under what they expected, it's their job to explain why and the proposed recommendations, actions to take. I mean, so it's all with the clarity that number provides you, are you over or under, right? Best practice is get your baseline and then run scenarios. Well, what if I went to my ideal segment of the market, the clients I can really help, and there's a price premium. There's so much value being created. You know, maybe we can increase the price 5% so that we can breathe more on this end. The example I'm showing you, you got your baseline here in the first column, and then we're showing, you know, a 1% change in price, then 1% manage costs better, then a 1% manage overhead better. So very, very small numbers, 1 + 1 + 1. In this case, equals 39% improvements in profitability, right? So you get it, now it's getting interesting. Now it's dynamic. What if, right? A lot of times 80-20, you know, 80% of your profit comes from 20% of your clients, right? Or likewise on activities. So wow, once you can see that with the numbers, you start to think maybe I should get more clients like that and let the ones that we're not a good fit for, let them go, right? Because that alone will drop money it'll de-intensify the business and drop more money, grow the top line and grow the bottom line, right? So that kind of stuff. That's
better yet, send those clients to your competitor.
Yeah, that's playing chess, huh?
Yeah, he'll drag them down and you can go up.
Yeah, but you wouldn't know that if you don't run the numbers, right? Whatever, right? Sometimes the clients that you're not making money on are taking 80% of your time, right? So maybe just knowing that, at least you have a decision point, right? What do you do? What do you not do? So this is where habit one and habit two really pay off, where you can engineer profitability.
Look, okay, need to move along here, Kirk, I think.
Yep. So we're going to jump into habit four. This is you, John.
Okay. So on Kirk's foundation work here, he's talking about not just having numbers, but having smart numbers, and also paying attention to your cash. You can be a profitable business that goes out of business because you ran out of cash and couldn't make payroll, even though it's a great idea and a great product and you're a great company. So we don't want those two things to happen. And then also dynamically budgeting, looking ahead of the curve, not just once a year, every month, look ahead of the curve and see what's coming. Once you've got those foundations and fundamentals in place, and it's not just you, but your team, people you depend on to make the magic, then together you start to drive performance. So when you go to the doctor and you get your temperature, oh, it's 102 temperature, how interesting. You get your blood pressure, you know, and it's 150 over 120. You think, oh, that's interesting. They don't just say that's interesting. They say, compared to normal, you are out of whack. And so that's one thing that we often don't do, is we don't pull in. There's a lot of databases available. We have them, and you can compare yourself to kind of averages of similar companies. And although you don't have to be average, and you don't have to be exceptional, but if you're way out of whack, if your numbers are way wrong, it tells you something. Even though it looks reasonable, looks normal, and you have good explanations for why it is that way, then you can start to drive your performance to be at least normal, and better yet, be in the top 10 or 20% of your sector. And there's millions of companies, and most of them do things that are similar to you, not exactly. But you can kind of get a real gauge of if you're winning the race or if you're just running. And a real important part of this more sophisticated part of doing these fundamentals is that. Start to measure yourself against the best, and then start to fix the low-hanging, you start to tweak. Just like Olympic runners, they go from, a 4-minute mile to a 350 to a 340 to a again, just 10 seconds at a time, they drive themselves to world class. And that's an important function here. And we're gonna move pretty quickly because this habit 4 is it's the big leagues. It's what you do once you've got the first 3 figured out. And let's move to habit. Let's move to the next slide there, Kirk, because I think this is kind of the key point today of what happens once you've got these fundamentals in place, which a lot of people do, but they don't take it to this next level. Every company has financial indicators, which we just talked about, and non-financial indicators. And these are risk factors or structural factors in every business that need to be managed. And so we run 2 sets of analyses, a financial analysis and then a non-financial analysis. And in here, you find structural weaknesses and strengths. And once you've got your numbers, you can identify these non-financial weaknesses and strengths. And that's where you get the extra to be smarter than your neighbors. You can have a score, an average against other companies, where you can see where you are going to be weaker than others in certain areas. And sometimes you accept that weakness. You have a weakness because you have one customer you sell on Amazon. Well, you can't get over that one, but you can get over everything else. And so you can strengthen your company, not just in financial ways, but in non-financial ways, in strategic ways. And you get the real bang for the buck when you get both the financial blocking and tackling and the strategic integration. That's where you get the special magic that comes together, and you get the multiplier effect of profitability. So when we talk at Foresight about financial management and going from defense to offense, we're not just talking about having good numbers that you can show your accountant. We're talking about using these numbers to make magic, business magic, because you've combined the numbers with your business instincts and data about the real environment. And that's where the payoff comes. A lot of times you just have a bunch of numbers in the books, there's no payoff. The numbers comes when you apply it to the real world. And that to me is where we need to get to. And that's the difference. One more slide here, Kurt. That's the difference between playing defense or going on offense. Right? When you really shift it up from my accounting team keeps my numbers really good shape, to I use those numbers to really leverage the world, the downfield blocking and tackling. Right? I know when to throw the bomb because I know exactly what's going on the field, and I've looked down the field and down the road 3 or 4 different ways, and I found a weakness or a strength that I can exploit, and I'm going to score even in a very difficult situation. And so I think that's kind of our takeaway for today is that when you put all these pieces together and then you pull in these larger environmental evaluations together, you can make a plan that gets through this really kind of difficult coming 2 quarters is what we estimate will be at least 2 quarters before things go back to normal. And even if, God forbid, something happens to your customers or business, the fact that you have done this homework and done your work, looked at 4 or 5 financially supported options, clear idea of the environment, you have confidence. You've done your bit. You've really gone on offense. No matter what happens, you've done everything you can do to clear the deck and to come out of this stronger than you went into it. Yeah. Many times, difficult economic times take down your competitors, and you don't have to be you don't actually have to be brilliant. You just have to be better than they are. Be standing at the end of this difficult time. So I think rather than kind of get discouraged and kind of focus on Netflix and forget about trying to do this stuff, this is a good time to really go on the offense. All right, Kirk, I'll turn it over to you for the.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it feels more empowering to be out there, deciding what matters and going after it. And, to give perspective, we work, I don't know, hundreds of companies globally, CEOs of all types of personalities. And most private businesses do not have the numbers working, like we recommend the habit that they do not have the habits working for them in the way that we're putting out right here with this level of clarity. And, like using the monthly financials like a scoreboard, and engineering profitability with the 12-month forecast. I mean, those are real skills to bring into a company and start to change the culture of ownership, right? But in fairness to us, most companies, companies of the size that we polled don't have these in place. The larger companies, they do. They have entire teams of people who do this, and they figured it out. So what I'm putting out there is this is a skill. Don't try to don't go there alone. And so what we do at Foresight CFO is we help CEOs use the numbers to win more customers, keep the customers they have the right people in place to deliver quality. Access to capital has been more pronounced recently than it has in several years, and then achieving that strong financial footing, right, where you do feel good, you can sleep at night, you do have clarity, and we do this through growth CFO work to contrast ourselves from traditional CFOs and accounting services, which is that foundation, making sure that you have the right numbers to go into everything else that we talked about. So this is contact me to get the right growth CFO working on your team, and it starts out just with a 25-minute phone call to find out what's really going on. We can 30 years doing this, so there's almost any conversation that we can have. So we're going to send, John and I will send a link to where you have this recording and you have the slide deck that show going into 2021 planning and budgeting, what habits to put in place, wherever you're at, take it to the next step, right? So that you're anticipating things, and not only do you avoid stall points, but you're getting both the top line that you need and the bottom line that you need, so that you have the household income, and the hard work to do and pays off. So John, anything you want to say before we wrap it up?
No, I think we hit it pretty hard, Kirk. So good luck to everybody. I think we're all in this together.
Yeah, I was about to say, if I hear that one more time, right? But hey, thank you, and do send me an email, and we'll hop on a call and kind of figure out what the possibilities are if you want us on your team to do this work together. But thank you for joining us. Let's go into 2021 and be the country that we can be. So thank you, and John, thank you for hopping on. I know you got a lot of people you're helping out there. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
All right. And for all our friends out there, Russ and others, talk to you soon.